Hello and welcome back to the Zimmergy Synergy. This is our second episode. My name's Nate Ilawa. I was born here in American Samoa, raised in South San Francisco. Our family moved back here in 1987. I attended Leone Midkiff, Leone High School, and then off to college, University of Hawaii at Hilo, as well as the American Samoa Community College before that. We returned back, my wife and I, in 2003. I worked for the local government for a little while. Since 2013, I've worked for the Western Pacific Regional Fishery Management Council. I'm their staff here in American Samoa. And in 2016, my wife Emily and I founded Flying Fox Brewing Company. I'll get into that a little bit more later. First, about this podcast, it's called the Zimmergy Synergy, and I've had a lot of people ask what Zimmergy is. Zimmergy is the applied branch of chemistry that deals with fermentation, and in our case, it's the fermentation of beer. We also do some ciders and a hard seltzer for the first time. Synergy is the combined power of a group of things. When they are working together, it is greater than the total power achieved by each part working separately. So the name kind of went well together for me, the Zimmergy Synergy. And the reason why we're doing this little video podcast is mostly to share our love for appreciation for beer making, beer tasting. We also like to highlight some of our beers that we do. We will also be pairing those beers with some food. And also, we take the opportunity to talk to some folks, some local folks here, maybe some from off island that we can get to call in, and kind of talk to them about the things that they're doing and highlight the work that they're doing. So we want to get people talking. It goes back to that idea of synergy and the sum of the whole being greater than the individual parts. So there's a saying, no one can whistle a symphony. It takes a whole orchestra to play it. So that's really the idea. So now I'd like to get into how Flying Fox Brewing Company came to be. It's a 5-year journey, and it's kind of equal parts instructional and cautionary. It was the goal of Emily and I to build the first brewery in American Samoa, and it certainly hasn't been easy. In fact, we've nearly called it quits a few times, but I'm glad we stuck with it, because this little business that we've started truly is a labor of love. So I think it was about 5 years ago. And so every idea that turns out becoming a good one has that little bit of a light bulb moment. You know, things that kind of stand out in your memory. And I can remember some things from long ago, like what t-shirt I wore to the opening of Return of the Jedi in 1983. I remember standing in line with my mom at Best Company to get a Nintendo when they first came out in 1985. But if you asked me what I had for dinner on Tuesday, I'd have no idea. So this is one of those things that I remember very well. Emily and I were eating a stir-fried dinner, and we had that discussion that eventually led to us deciding to turn our homebrew hobby into a business. So we'd been brewing beer at home for quite a while at that point. Family gatherings, get-togethers with friends, barbecue. You know, we really enjoyed sharing the beers that we made with other people, especially people who hadn't tried different styles of ales, and so it's nice to be able to share those things. And we got a lot of great feedback from our friends and family, and more than one suggestion that we should start a business. So, we live in American Samoa, and it's a chain of five volcanic islands with two coral atolls. We are the southernmost United States possession and the only U.S. soil, in fact, that's in the southern hemisphere. So, more importantly for this episode, there are 0 breweries here in American Samoa before we got started. Basically, there were 2 major options for beer drinkers, your German-style lagers, and then American light beers. I think recently a lot of distributors have started bringing in more varieties of beers, and it's a great thing. Variety is the spice of life. But, some people just think all beers taste the same, but do they really? So, I've lived in American Samoa since 1987, and aside from my time living in Hawaii, going to college, I always drank. My go-to drink was Bud Light. I loved Bud Light and Coors Light. Those were my 2 drinks. I think they stopped bringing in Bud Light here in American Samoa for a while, so it was just Coors Light for a long time. That was my drink. But I have a friend that I met at UH Hilo. His name's Josh DeMello. We met in a UH Hilo chemistry class in 1999, probably 1999. Something about bionomenclature homework or some weird thing like that. I'll let him tell you. He's actually going to be a guest of mine on the next episode of the Zimmergy Synergy. But anyways, so Josh works with me at the Western Pacific Regional Fishery Management Council. And so before I worked for the council, they would come down here to do work. And we'd usually get together and have some beers. When I would travel, I'd usually stop in and he'd take me and get beers in Honolulu. And so we'd go to these places and, I'd get my Coors Light, and he'd always be drinking these beers that I thought were pretty strange and never heard of them. They usually had cool labels and funny names, but more importantly, they didn't taste anything like the kind of beer that I had been accustomed to drinking. And I'm not a beer snob, and drinking beer should be about whatever flavor you enjoy the most. I don't hate the big beer companies. I've just grown to prefer different styles of beers. And I still drink Coors Light. I still drink Bud Light. And I enjoy them. And I don't like to school people on beer. That's something that personally drives me nuts about some beer enthusiasts, beer snobs, if you will. But let me get back to Josh and how he kind of plays into this whole story. So we'd go drink beers in Honolulu, and so he finally convinced me, "Here, you got to try some of this stuff," and I did. And to be honest, it wasn't like instant. I liked it, Some of it was just a complete shock to the taste buds, especially the IPAs and even some of the imperial stouts and so forth. So initially, I preferred stuff like Pilsner and Hefeweizen, stuff, wheat beers, but those eventually became my gateway to larger beer appreciation, and eventually those same tastes and flavors that were just a shock to the senses, I loved them and I craved them whenever we went out to have beers. So I travel to Honolulu for work occasionally, and it's now the highlight of my trip is to go and visit these breweries there and try different kinds of beers, get ideas to bring home, and then try to make beers that might be similar to them, but I like to put my own little twist, especially with local flavors. And so the next step after starting to like these beers was naturally home brewing. So Emily and I started with an extract kit, an 8-gallon stainless steel kettle, and that's it pretty much. We ordered some beer kits. We graduated to brew in a bag, and then eventually all grain brewing. And so Emily, my wife, has been there with me for every single batch I've ever brewed, ever since the very beginning, which was, I think, a Fat Tire clone way back, all the way up to the Copper Slobber Rye Pale Ale that we brewed last week. And that's kind of been our thing, brewing together. You know, we've had 3 kids in the last 11 years, and you know, it's not easy to find time to do things together when you have kids. So brewing kind of became our date night, and that was kind of our thing. You know, I guess some couples have movie night or going out to dinner. We like to fill our house with that sweet smell of malts in the mash. So I guess we're just weird like that. So, and that kind of takes me back again to that very first stir-fry dinner we had 5 years ago, and how we decided we would, you know, take the leap and turn our hobby into a business. And it was the night that we decided we would just go for it. And, you know, we were so happy. Let's do this. Let's get our business license. And then reality kind of smacked us in the face. So yeah, ideas are great and all, but figuring out how to bring that idea of a business that's in your mind to reality is definitely full of challenges, especially for something that hasn't been done here. That was really tough. So we're basically learning as we went along. For starters, the problem of a location, we didn't have a location. We live way out in the west side in the village of Leone, and our house is kind of off the main road. It would be not enough space for a brewery, just a really poor location for us. So we had to find a spot, and luckily my mom's nonprofit had a spare conference room that they weren't using anymore, and so she let us turn that conference room into a little brew pub. It was a tiny space, but it served us just right. And that location is in Pavaiai Village. It's right at the corner of the intersection going up to the village of Aluau. And the location is just nestled in one of the most beautiful inland areas in the entire island of Tutuila. So there's a heritage forest, my mom's garden that her and my dad have grown and made beautiful over the past 30 years. It just sits right there. So we ended up with the perfect spot. So we had our location. Then it was time to turn that empty conference room into a brew pub. So we had to look at a bunch of bar decor ideas on Pinterest. We just scoured the internet looking at different images, designs. We drew up some rough sketches, and we did share those sketches with our friend Tatofi, who's a local contractor. Showed him the sketches, and he was like, "Yeah, we can do this." So it was pretty nerve-wracking because, we were doing something that we had never done before. We'd never built a bar before. We'd never even had a business. So this was just something completely new, and every single decision just seemed to be completely nerve-wracking. So we went from stressing about the material of the countertops to the layout, the seating. Everything just seemed like it was such a monumental decision. So what we ended up doing was going with a small indoor bar. We have a lanai and then two falisamoa for outdoor seating. We have recently also put up a big pavilion tent with another table. So it's pretty nice, and there's only a couple other places, and I'm thinking of Antitisa's Barefoot Bar and Maliu Mai, that kind of focus on the outdoor natural setting. So, different beer, different decor, different vibe. We were all over that. And I have to admit, when we got to the brew pub on the very last day of construction, when Tatofi wrapped things up, and we just kind of sat there, we poured some of the Hefeweizen that we had brewed, and we sat there in the fale with Tatofi and his partner Siope, just drinking that cold beer and looking at what he had done. It was a great feeling. We sat there and just admired the work and just had a really good feeling about what the future held for our little business. Of course, good feelings don't last forever, and we kind of realized that our little 8-gallon stainless steel kettle wasn't going to cut the mustard unless we wanted to brew beer about 8 times a day. So eventually we had to upgrade, and for anyone who's into home brewing, they know that brewing equipment is not cheap. So we really took it one step at a time. We were pretty hesitant to get a loan, and we especially didn't want to take on any investors. We were determined to sink or swim on our own. We were extremely lucky to receive a $5,000 small business revitalization and development grant from Bank of Hawaii before they closed, and we're just extremely thankful to the former branch manager, Mr. E.J. Ozu, who played such a huge role in helping us take that first step to getting the brewery started. With that, we were able to do our first equipment upgrade with that money. So thank you, E.J. Ozu. And then there was also the issue of ingredients, and we live here in the tropics, right around the equator, 14 degrees south latitude, and so there are no hops that grow here. We don't grow grains, so everything needs to be shipped from the U.S. mainland, and so American Samoa is 4,700 miles away from the U.S. West Coast, so shipping is a problem. You can usually slap about a 20% extra onto anything that you purchase from off island for the shipping. Luckily, when we were getting started and doing lots of experimental brews, we were able to find Homebrew in Paradise, located in Honolulu. And they are the closest homebrew shop to American Samoa. Just a little short hop, skip, and a jump, plus swim and a paddle. 2,600 miles northeast from here. And despite how close they are to us, there were still challenges. Shipping was still tough. But the owner, Bill, he's just been so amazing since we started doing this. And so Bill never said no. He would always say, well, let me figure out how we can do it. And he's always come through. We've ordered ingredients, equipment, supplies from him. And Bill, thank you very much. So if you're ever in Honolulu and you need to get some homebrew supply, please stop by at Homebrew in Paradise. He's always gone the extra mile to help us out, and his shipping rates are just very fair. He also just started his own brewery called Broken Boundary Brewery in Honolulu. So if you're in Honolulu, go check out Broken Boundary Brewery. I haven't been there yet since they opened, but my next trip, whenever that may be, I definitely plan on going and trying the beer. So we have ingredients, we have a location. Then it was all about the license, and getting our liquor license was extremely, extremely difficult. We had to learn a lot about local laws during the process. We spent a good deal of time on the Bar Association website looking over the regulations for the alcoholic beverage control. Took 2.5 years, but we finally were able to push through and with some help get that liquor license. So we're all about the beer. We strive to have something for everyone. So if that's our Flying Fox beer, then awesome, we love that. But people who want a Vailima or a Bud Light or a Coors Light, we won't send you guys packing. We know that everyone has their own tastes in beer, and so we keep our brew pub stocked with all kinds of beers. And I know the distributors. In fact, some of them I've known since we were kids. And believe it or not, I want them to succeed, even though our businesses may be in competition to some degree. And they encourage me, and I encourage them as well. And I think it goes back to Polynesian culture, and at its root, it's a very tight-knit community that looks out for one another. So we're not going to mess with that formula. You know, it's stood the test of time. So we may have different businesses, but I think we all want each other to succeed. So I understand why the independent breweries in the States are looking to set themselves apart from corporate beer companies. But in a place like American Samoa that's so small, it's just a different dynamic. You know, we all support each other and wish each other success. There aren't a ton of locally owned businesses. There are a lot of foreign owned businesses, and because it's just got this small town feel, the atmosphere here, everyone wants to see local businesses succeed. But I digress. So, when we had gotten everything together, it was late 2017, and our target date was October 1st, 2018, and we were dead set on hitting that target. And then problems happened, and we didn't end up opening until the 4th of July of last year, 2019. So this coming Saturday, the 4th of July, will mark our 1-year anniversary. We're also going to be celebrating Friday, and we're declaring it America Samoa Craft Beer Day. So from now on, every first Friday of July will be that celebration. And we'll have some special things for that event. Some beers, some ciders, some seltzer, and our new ahi burger, which we tried last weekend, and it's just fantastic. I think you'll love it. But that's the story of how the brewery came to be. So thank you for tuning in, and I hope you join me the next episode when we talk to my buddy Josh that I talked about earlier. So for now, thank you and take care. Be well. Stay safe. Cheers, America Samoa.